roster shakeup has begun. The New York Yankees have traded Gary Sanchez and Urshela to the Minnesota Twins for Josh Donaldson, Isiah Kiner-Falefa, and catcher Ben Rortvedt. And this was a trade that I don't think any of us really saw coming, but we knew that the Yankees had to do something. The Yankees could not run it back with the same team. There was just no way. That's why when the Yankees weren't doing anything and everyone was freaking out, and look, if the Yankees actually did nothing, then I would have been absolutely furious. But this signals the beginning of, I think, many moves to come. That's just the way that I see this. I think that the Yankees, they couldn't stand pat. Will this trade work out? We'll see. This is a lot to decipher. And I don't think we're going to have the answers right now. So, this is a standalone trade. We'll try to evaluate that. But I think, I very well see myself, doing another episode within the next couple of days that might provide more answers to this trade. This could be a domino effect. So, let's first talk about the players the Yankees traded away. Gary Sanchez being the first one. Gary Sanchez was one of the longest tenured Yankees, had been in the system for a very long time, came on with a bang in 2016. Unbelievable, really was the leader of the Baby Bombers. He was. So much promise, so much expectation on everything. The way he hit for power, for average, his defense. What an arm. Everything. And so 16, even though he really only played for about 2 months, he finished second in Rookie of the Year. He was so good, it was insane. He hit 20 home runs in basically 200 at-bats. It was, the numbers were astronomical. Over a 1 OPS. Just everything that you could hope for and more from Gary Sanchez. He follows it up in 2017 with a very strong season. Very strong season. He, not quite as really dynamic as he had been in 16 in that shorter sample size. And Gary always dealt with some injuries. There was never a full season of play. Very rare that he did. And in fact, really in 2016, and it was, again, only about 2 months, that was when, fully healthy, no problems. But in 17, he follows up that really good 16 campaign with 33 home runs and 90 RBIs, 278 batting average, and an 876 OPS. So a really strong, while not as great season as 16, still, all right, this is, you sign up for it. And at that point, Gary Sanchez is still one of your best players. Now, at that same time, Aaron Judge has his amazing rookie year. But even still, in my mind at that time, I'm still thinking pure hitter-wise, Gary Sanchez is still one of the best in this Yankee lineup and what was a promising future for the team. But in 18, he takes a major step back, major step back, as he bats 186, only plays 89 games, 18 home runs, 53 RBIs, strikes out 94 times within that span. Just an ugly season for Gary Sanchez. Had some moments in the 2018 playoffs against the Red Sox. He did. I remember he homered in Game 2 at Fenway Park. He almost hit what would have been a dramatic walk-off grand slam in Game 4 that would have, kept the Yankees alive, and it would have been a series deciding Game 5 in Boston, but it wasn't meant to be. And then 2019, he bounces back slightly. This was much better than 18, but not as good as 17. Not even close to as good as 17, but really 19, this was his last good season. I'd say, keeping in mind that his defense is kind of deteriorating along the way. Like, he's not able to do just simple things. Blocking the baseball is becoming difficult. It's just you're really seeing that he's becoming a liability behind the plate in many, many ways. But in 19, only plays 106 games. And again, you got to keep in mind, catchers, they're not going to, there's going to be a lot of off days to begin with, but still, you want more than 106 games, 34 home runs and 77 RBIs. So the strikeouts are still pretty high, 125 of them, but 232 batting average, which is much worse than early in his career, but an 841 on base percentage. So the power is still very much there. And then 2020 was a disaster. 2020 was an absolute nightmare in the pandemic shortened season. Really bad, even worse than 2018. He bats 147 in 49 games, 156 at bats. Bats 147, 10 home runs, 24 RBIs, 18 walks, 64 strikeouts. Just insanely bad. But he gets another chance in 2021, and it was better than 2020 because nothing could be that worse. But this was a season that was slightly better than his disastrous 2018 and definitely worse than his 2019 season. So, he hits 23 home runs, 54 RBIs, bats 204, OPS 730. So, look, among catchers in baseball, this isn't bad just because catchers is a tough position. But the point is this had to happen. Gary Sanchez had to go. He had 1 year left on his contract. It just wasn't going to work out. I'm very happy that he's gone. I'm not saying that I'm not grateful for, especially early in his career. It was fun. Gary Sanchez in 2016 and 2017, full of great moments, like just really symbolic of the new era and what was promise for the Yankees. And Gary is part of the reason why the Yankees haven't fulfilled that promise of winning a championship, of reaching a World Series. He is a major reason why they fell short. There was a lot of hope. And, look, I just think maybe it's unfair to use those lofty expectations against him, but that's just the way it is. So Gary Sanchez, gone. He's now going to be a Minnesota Twin. Gio Urshela. Gio, this one hurts more. Definitely. So whereas Gary was around since 16 in terms of legitimate, he had brief moments and he'd been in the organization for a while. Gio Urshela comes into play in the 2019 season. He was a journeyman, really good defensive infielder for the Cleveland Indians. But he ends up in the Toronto Blue Jays. The Blue Jays trade Gio to the Yankees for cash considerations. And Gio has a pretty good spring in 2019. And then injuries happen, and he gets called up. And, oh, my goodness, Gio Urshela in 19 and in 20 was really amazing, a revelation, where he basically took Miguel Andujar's job in 19. So Miguel Andujar, who's still in the Yankees, had a really good 2018. Andujar was a Rookie of the Year finalist. Shohei Ohtani beat out Andujar and Gleyber Torres. But it was Gio Urshela that basically took away Andujar's job. He was just defensively great. There was a lot of power, he wasn't striking out that much. So in 2019, he gets 21 home runs, 74 RBIs, bats 314, and has an OPS of 889. Just amazing for Gio Urshela. And he follows it up with 2020, and shorter season. He only plays 43 games, but a really nice season there as well. Bats 298, OPS of 858. The on-base percentages, he's walking. He had 8. So here's the interesting thing. 18 walks for Urshela, 25 strikeouts. That's a really solid ratio in 2020. But in 2021, it got a lot worse. And honestly, I would still say that in comparison to other Yankees, he was still one of the guys that you'd probably prefer, but he had some tough stretches. He mainly played third base, but because at the very end of the season, because Gleyber Torres just couldn't play short anymore and had to move to second, Gio played shortstop, even to the point where today, Aaron Boone had a press conference and he said, Gio Urshela, as of now, was the Yankees starting shortstop. Now he's no longer on the team. But Gio just a real likable guy. Whereas Gary, for me, just you hate to say lazy, but just with Gary, he just wasn't, in my opinion. Gary's very polarizing. There are fans that love him. I wasn't one of them. But Gio, what is there not to like about Giovanni Urshela? He really just he did so much for the Yankees when so little was expected of him. And that helps a lot. And so the Yankees are able to turn Gio into this Twins package. But just to wrap up on Urshela, it was a rough 2021 season where there's injuries. He bats 267, which that in itself is okay. It's worse than those other 2 years, but a 301 on base percentage and a 720 OPS, much worse than those 2 seasons. And what really concerns me is the walk to strikeout ratio. 20 walks, 109 strikeouts. Whereas the year before, 2 less walks. And so 2 less walks the year before, and also like 80 less strikeouts. So he was striking out at a pretty decent rate and was not walking at all. So you don't love that. But what I remember about him is like one of the last memories for Gio Urshela was the last regular season game against the Tampa Bay Rays, where he just goes full on, dives into the Rays dugout and makes just an amazing catch. That's kind of a lasting memory for me about Urshela. Really, I think among Yankee fans, like that stings. That in some ways, Gio is almost collateral damage, by trading Sanchez. And who knows how these discussions went down exactly, but Gio is gone. Now the return. Josh Donaldson. Josh Donaldson, the Yankees have seen an awful lot of him over his career, mostly with the Toronto Blue Jays, but he's been in the American League almost all of his career except for 1 year with the Atlanta Braves in 2019. Josh Donaldson used to be a perennial MVP candidate. He even won the MVP in 2015. He is no longer that player. He was, in the mid tens, mid 2010s. He was really one of the best all-around players. And I mean, he could do it all. Great fielder, hit for average, great patience, power, like everything that you could really ask for. Donaldson now, not, definitely on the decline, but still very good. Like like Josh Donaldson, because I kind of want to compare him to Gary. I mean, we could go either way here. I mean, Donaldson to Gio from a positional standpoint makes sense. Josh Donaldson is a much better hitter than Gio Urshela. There's no doubt. But if we want, like, Gary Sanchez became a bottom of the order guy. Josh Donaldson will be in the middle of that order. He will be somewhere, maybe like batting 5th or 6th, maybe even higher than that. But Donaldson, they took on his contract. It's a pretty hefty one for the next couple of seasons. This is not something I expected. Josh Donaldson is someone who I did not like. There were the Garrett Cole comments about the sticky substance. So that will be an interesting story here. I think that they'll get along fine. It's not something that I'm concerned with, but it was something I thought about immediately once the trade did happen. But I'm sure that'll be water under the bridge. But Donaldson, what's also interesting is that there were reports that Josh Donaldson, forgot to provide his no trade list, and that the Yankees would have been on that no trade list. This may or may not be true. So, maybe take it with a grain of salt, but I could see that. Josh Donaldson, that's not someone who I would have seen on the Yankees. And he's a guy that I don't think would really want to be on the Yankees. At the same time, the Yankees needed a dynamic change, and Donaldson can provide that. He's one of those guys that feels like if you go against him, you hate him, but if he's on your team, you love him, of course, if he's performing. And I think with Donaldson, he can provide that fire. This Yankee club, it was nice. These were like nice guys, likable guys. Donaldson, he's gonna mix it up in there. It's gonna be different. It's gonna be a different looking clubhouse. So this is just the first of what I think could be many more moves. Donaldson's hungry to win a World Series. He's come close before, and just back in 2019 was incredible for the Atlanta Braves. Hit 37 home runs, 94 RBIs, had a 900 OPS. With the Twins, what's still good is that the patience and like the good eye is still there. Last season, 26 homers, 72 RBIs, 827 OPS. So still a very good player. Not as good as he used to be at third base, but he's not going to hurt you. But he's not, whereas he used to have a really good glove over there. Not quite as much now. But Donaldson, this will be interesting. Like I said, it's someone who isn't as good as he used to be. He's going to get worse more than he's going to get better in all likelihood. Although, Yankees Stadium could be a good fit. But this is someone I'm impressed by the fact that he walks a lot, but also doesn't strike out all that much. So Gary Sanchez strikes out more than Josh Donaldson. Gio Urshela this past season strikes out more than Josh Donaldson, and Donaldson walks a lot, has a much better eye. So Donaldson, certainly from a hitting perspective, is a definite upgrade. Now we move to Isiah Kiner-Falefa, who barely spent any time, a couple of days with the Minnesota Twins. He was on the Texas Rangers and was traded for Mitch Garver. And so Kiner-Falefa has bounced around positionally, but what he's known for is his glove. Came up as a catcher, which is ironic that we now have a spot, sort of a hole at catcher, but that ship has sailed for him. He won a Gold Glove as a third baseman in the shortened 2020 season for Texas. And then this past season, played shortstop, and presumably that's where he'll be playing for the Yankees. And this is someone who grades out very well defensively. That is his bread and butter. He has speed. He stole 20 bases last season and has always been able to run and is a pure contact hitter. Can't hit for average. He hit 280 in the shortened 2020 season and hit 271 in 2021. Does not walk at all, but does not strike out at all either. So I think I think he's someone that could be interesting. A decent stopgap before we see the likes of an Anthony Volpe or Oswaldo Peraza. Volpe, Peraza, maybe more so 2023, but I think Kiner-Falefa it makes sense to see what he can do. Still pretty young, and contract-wise is completely fine. So I think that this is something the Yankees had been interested in. He brings some athleticism to the Yankees, which they desperately need because they just didn't have that. And he is someone that can make things happen on the base paths, should really help shore things up defensively for the Yankees. So make no mistake, Donaldson and Kiner-Falefa were both important pieces to this deal. There's no way around that. And then the third piece, the reason why he is relevant is because catcher right now, we'll see where that goes. And that would be Ben Rortvedt. So he is someone who I think is a defensive first catcher. No offense. But you know what? If the Yankees go in a just purely defensive-minded catcher position, I'm all right with that. If that's what happens, would I be happy if they, trade for a catcher of some sort? Sure, definitely. Do I think Kyle Higashioka is a starter in this league? Absolutely not. He's not. But right now, it looks like the Higgy-Rortvedt sort of combination could be a thing. But that's why I want to just pause before making major declarations off this trade. There's going to be a lot of moves that come. And with that in mind, let's talk about infield for a second. You have third base, likely Josh Johnson. Again, I say likely because you just never know. Like Isiah Kiner-Falefa got flipped. And maybe that was all part of the plan, is that they knew that they would get him and maybe trade him to the Yankees. But Josh Donaldson at third, Kiner-Falefa at short. At second base right now is Gleyber Torres. Right now, first base, you have DJ LeMahieu. Luke Voigt is still on the roster, although I have to think that Luke Voigt gets traded. I don't see a world in which that doesn't happen. But the Yankees still seem to be in the market for a first baseman. I don't think it'll be Freddie Freeman. You hear the Yankees name. I think it looks like the Braves or maybe the Dodgers for Freddie Freeman. What I could see maybe happening is bringing back Anthony Rizzo. I think that's definitely in play, and I would welcome that. I think Rizzo, keeping expectations reasonable, I think Rizzo would be a fine player to have for the Yankees. And maybe the possibility of trading for Matt Olson. I think that could happen. And maybe like trading Gleyber Torres within that package. The good thing about this trade, this Donaldson, we'll call him, because Kiner-Falefa, a bit long, we'll call him IKF. I think that trade, the good thing about it is that you weren't trading away, future assets, future prospects. Gary Sanchez, his days with the Yankees were numbered. And Gio, he had this year, next year on his contract. But I think they got out in front of this. He really took a step back in 2021, as much as I like the guy. So I think that in that sense, it's good. I think you're more likely to see big-time prospects traded in what would be a Matt Olson type of trade. So we'll see if that happens, but I have to think that there's a chance that Gleyber gets traded. But if he doesn't, then does DJ LeMahieu become kind of a jack of all trades, just plug them in and give guys off days kind of thing? Like there's got to be more moves that happen just based on there kind of being a logjam in the infield. And now you have an open spot at catcher. So that's another thing to think about as well. So I think that this is going to be the first of many, many moves in what will be a bit of a roster shakeup. And this is the prime example of that, like that they just needed a new look. Whether it works or not, they needed a change. This is a definite change optically. Gary Sanchez was a mainstay since 2016. Gio Urshela was a mainstay since 2019. And, I just think that they needed a little bit more fire. They needed a little bit more athleticism. Needed a little bit better defense, and they're addressing all of those things. So I am happy with this trade, while also acknowledging that we don't know what's going to happen next. We really don't. So whether you like it, don't like it, it'd be foolish to say, yep, like definite steal, or yep, definitely got hosed. Because, in this unique situation with baseball returning late, the Yankees things are going to happen quickly now. And so I think first base will be addressed. I think, certainly I don't think pitching is that much. I mean, you can never have enough pitching, but there will be some pitching moves, but none that I foresee being major. But we'll see. I know that they had said that center field, they wanted to kind of address that, but for better or worse, like with Aaron Hicks, I think he'll be the center fielder, and just make sure that you have depth there. The Yankees did re-sign Tim LoCastro, so he'll be in the mix. You have to think Brett Gardner is going to be back. I kind of don't want him to be, but like you're ready for that to happen at some point. So we were waiting for this, hungry for some action, and we got it. And I will say, to close, happy to see Gary gone, truly. Sad to see Gio go, but understand why. And very excited to see where things go from here. So again, Gary Sanchez and Gio Urshela traded to the Minnesota Twins.